We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
True nostalgia is an ephemeral composition of disjointed memories. This is what author Florence King wrote. But how does this sentiment apply today? Well, it seems that the world we once knew is on the verge of becoming little more than nostalgia. The values, the concerns, the things we once thought important are all either dismissed or derided. But as the saying goes, the fish often rots from the head. Welcome back to Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio American Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. And on today's show, we talk mask mandates, woke Disney, Putin's no-plan game plan, and we discuss the battle between free speech and compelled speech, and a whole lot more besides. I want to take a moment to say a special thank you to our listeners out in Evergreen, Alabama on WNWF 1470 AM and WPNS on 1140 AM. Thank you for being here. And remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows that will whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Let's get started. Should you or shouldn't you? That's the question regarding face masks on public transport in America. Well, it's been a back and forth, as we've all seen. But to help us delve into the politics of it, what's really behind and what we can be expecting coming up, we're lucky enough to be joined by Liberty Nation's editor-in-chief, Ms. Lisa K. Donner. Welcome back to the show, Lisa.
Thanks, Mark. Good to be here.
So, Lisa, give me the basics. Give me the rundown of what's happened so far.
All right, here's the skinny, Mark. Just when you thought it was over. I mean, you feel like you should be singing a song. You know, it's unfortunately the federal travel mask mandates have become such a political football. And so, you know, they were set to end, and then they were set to end again, and then they were set to end again. You know, it's a constant extension. But this last time, a federal district judge, and that is true, actually, that title, federal district judge in Tampa, said enough already, you know, done, fini. And she struck down the federal mask mandate for public transportation on Tuesday. And then in kind of an after hours thing, up comes the DOJ and says, well, you know, if the CDC says we should go ahead and challenge this, let's challenge this. But in between that time, there was a little bit of time for the Associated Press to get a poll out, but I'll stop there and let you.
Sure. There's so many facets to this story. I mean, we had directly after the judge ruled that what they were doing, the CDC's order was basically unlawful. You had Joe Biden made a quick response and says, well, you know, I guess people can wear masks if they want to and not if they don't.
I know.
So is this a case of we have a rogue Joe Biden?
No, you know, he's consistently not knowing what's going on. You know, I think there's nothing new here. You know, they tell him what to say. And, you know, I hate to be so mean, you know, because I do think he suffers from a problem here. But, you know, he has to answer if he's president of the United States. And I just think he's out of touch. But I will say a little bit in his defense, it is hard to keep score, you know, to mask or not to mask. I mean, tomorrow, for instance, I'm going to get on an airplane. And I'm going to get on an airplane without wearing my mask. But you bet I'm going to have one in my back pocket.
Absolutely. It's the sensible way to do it because you never know when things are going to change. But speaking of Joe Biden not really knowing what his government's doing, isn't that a serious cause for concern for Americans that it's not Joe Biden who's making decisions? Because that's what it seems to outside observers. It seems that it's not Joe Biden making the policy. And if that's true, then who is?
No, you're right. And I think everybody thinks it's his staff because they're always contradicting him. But look, we're more than a year into this. The American people are sort of used to him being out of it. So what we're having to do is just live with it. I mean, we got to live with it. What are the alternatives here? They're not good. And just push on and deal with, you know, the people or the powers that be. I don't know if it's Ron Klain. I don't know who is running things, but they seem to always contradict Joe. But, you know, I just wanted to bring up one thing, and that was the AP poll that said 56%.
That was my next question, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Hit me with that. Hit me with those numbers.
56% of Americans are okay. In fact, they want mask mandates on federal transportation, well, on public transportation, let's say, not federal transportation. The AP NORC, Center for Public Affairs Research, said 56%. And of course, they said it's along party lines. 80% of Democrats said to keep their masks. We're all for it. But 45% of Republicans said, I've had it. I wonder, are they polling people who have never gotten their rear ends on a flight in America or anywhere else? Are they talking to people that actually get on Amtrak and have to sit for 3 hours or longer in, a mask to get from Washington to New York? Are they dealing with people who have to go 5 hours from, say, Washington to LA? I mean, come on. I don't know a single soul, and maybe I'm living in a bubble. Okay, you can accuse me of that. I don't know of a single soul that is really so excited to get masked up to get on a train or a plane.
Well, I think there's two aspects to that, really, Lisa. I mean, when you look into polling like this, they're not differentiating for people who get to travel in their cars to work and back. Now, any federal mandates on businesses, that's done. That's already done. So these people, they don't have to wear masks anyway for going to work. So you've got people who drive to work. So they're not going to really care one way or the other. They don't have a dog in the fight, as it were, in terms of traveling on the planes or traveling on Amtrak or on public buses on a daily basis, that kind of thing. They don't have a dog in the fight in that. And the other aspect that I think is vitally important is that mask wearing has become very much a way of virtue signaling for many people, and supporting the mask also is a way of virtue signaling that I'm a good person because I care about others because I wear a mask. And that's the messaging that's been coming out from the White House since Joe Biden got into office. So when people say, are you for or against the masks? Maybe when they're being asked the question, what they're actually hearing is, are you going to say that you're a good person or a bad person? And so therefore they answer whether they support it or not.
That's really interesting. Let me turn the tables on you and ask you a question. Do you think that there's a certain amount of brainwashing that has gone on? I mean, people actually think they're significant. And again, I'm not getting into whether they are safe or not. We don't need to get banned on all the social media. I'm not going to talk about the research, et cetera. But do you think there's a certain amount of people that actually feel like, I'd rather wear a mask because I don't know what Joe sitting next to me has, is just
you've asked the right question to the right person there, because brainwashing, it's really one of my favorite topics. Now, what we have to consider is brainwashing, is it tying people to chairs with brackets on their eyes, a la Clockwork Orange, or is it constant repetition of a theme, which is very likely what's been happening to America, rightly or wrongly, whether the information is right or wrong. But there's a constant messaging that's been taking place, and people have been punished for not wearing masks. There's been a full-on media campaign against people who haven't worn masks for 2 years now. And so I think, there's certainly some low-level mind control going on in the loosest sense of the word.
Let me ask you this, because I know you know a little bit about music. A lot of really great songs that kind of get stuck in your head. It's hooks. Theme and variation, right? Theme and variation. Isn't that what's going on with things like masks? I mean, they take the theme, masking is good for you. And then they vary it. Well, it's good in this circumstance. It's better in that circumstance. It's not as good as in this circumstance. You can use this mask or you can use that mask. See what I mean by theme and variation?
Yeah, that's a really interesting analogy, because like a symphony, it's one tune all the way through, but it's various movements throughout, and they're all building into the greater thematic quality of the piece of music. So yeah, I think you're probably right there with, they have a certain messaging to start off with, and then there's an extra peak in there. There's a little crescendo just to remind people of the tune that they're listening to. I think that's a really good analogy.
But at the end of it all, if it's a really good tune, or, if it has quite a melody, everybody's singing it, Mark.
Absolutely right. It gets stuck in the head. It's an earworm, as we call it in England, and I'm sure you do in America. Right. Quick fire last question for you, Lisa. How much of this is health and how much of this is politics?
Well, in a nutshell, I remember the famous saying from German novelist Thomas Mann, everything is politics. And, while there are coaching points to be made, I think Mann got a point.
Absolutely. The man knows. The man knows. Lisa K. Donna, thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Mark.
Coming up later in the show, we talk free speech versus compelled speech in our special Talking Liberty segment. But up next, is a woke Disney a broke Disney? Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for
I think
LibertyNation.com.
we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fighting for freedom.
The tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for
Guess what?
Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.